Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome us back in to reconvene an open session in order to save some time, and we're going to move commissioner reports and comments to the afternoon. I would like to see if we have any reports from staff. Mr. DeVito?
Are you presenting the home show? Okay, that's what I want. I wanted to, I'll go ahead and bring this up. Commissioners, I wanted to bring to your attention Katie Rathvon here, Brittany Higgins, Stephen Goodrich, Alex Reed, and Rich Eichelberger. If you would go ahead. Commissioners, these employees worked through the weekend and before the weekend 2 weeks ago, correct? To attend the home show, answer questions, be quite interactive. In fact, to the extent that they won the 34th annual home show most interactive presenter at the Home Builders Association of Washington County. So wow. I was hoping we could just give them a round of applause for their efforts.
All right, this is well worth it.
And it wasn't just this group either.
Right.
There were other employees who were also there, so it goes beyond saying just this group. So there were others there, and they worked at it just as hard as everyone else did.
The one-on-one engagement you have with the public is admirable, and the facts that you disseminate, so I appreciate that public relations effort.
He's on a big word.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All righty.
Words again.
Any other staff reports? Rob, anybody else you have for staff reports? Debbie Payton?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Commissioners, today we, in closed session, we hired an office manager at a grade 10, step 1, $40,581. Her name is Tanya Davis. She now currently works in the permits department, and she'll be moving to the business development department. Another individual for emergency management is emergency communication specialist trainee. It's a grade 8, step 1 at $34,798. We are hiring Brandy Hamilton for this position. And lastly, but certainly not least, we are transferring a gentleman, Travis Howes, to the eastern section of highways from Central.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other staff reports?
One item briefly, Commissioners. If you recall, there has been discussion regarding the Supreme Court decision in Janus versus AFSCME, local number 31, which changed the way public employers and unions interact. As a result of that, there needs to be some amendments to the collective bargaining agreement that's in place between the local union and the commissioners regarding the membership provisions and the authorization for deductions, so that the language in our agreement is consistent with the legal principles that were laid down in the Janus decision by the court. I have spoken with the union and the union's representative. We've gone back and forth on a draft amendment that addresses those issues, specifically only the membership issues and the dues deduction issues that were affected by the Janus provision. All other provisions of the memorandum of understanding would remain in place as they currently exist now between the parties. So if there is concurrence, I would ask for a motion to authorize the execution of Amendment Number 3 to the Memorandum of Understanding between the Board of County Commissioners in Washington County, Maryland, and Maryland Public Employees Council 67 AFL-CIO, and it's Local 2677 AFL-CIO. Again, this is basically housekeeping to keep up with the changing landscape that the Supreme Court put forth.
Commissioners, thoughts, consideration, motion? What do
I'll
you
make the
think?
motion.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other reports from county staff? Rob, anything?
No, sir.
All right, let's move on to our next item, citizens participation. Anyone here for citizens participation? Please come forward. Front row first, or however you guys want to yield.
Just you two, I think.
Yeah.
Pick a number between 1 and 10. There you go.
Please state your name and address, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, John Croca from the beautiful town of Boonesboro, 21130 Roy's Lane. Thank you. I'd like to request that the commissioners give us at least a brief update today on their ethics and diversity policies. I know there's been a lot of concern about ethics policies in the last couple of years, and I would like to thank Mr. Meinl-Schmidt for bringing this up. I'd like to know if you can, give us any timeline of what is going to be going forward in that regard, and what are some of the issues, and in particular, what about enforcement, since the state does not mandate guidelines and leaves that up to the county? That's my first question. I can go to that, or do you want me to just go ahead with my?
Just go ahead. If anybody would want to respond, that's their choices. I think I might have stolen court's message today in comments. I think you were going to bring something up about the ethics update. Well, you can do now or wait till later. Normally, we just listen to your comments, but I think court's ready to provide an update soon.
So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we're going to be able to bring I'll say amendment to the ethics policy, and what that policy, the first part of it, is going to be on how the members of the ethics commission are appointed. And what I would like to see is that we have 5 different community stakeholders, different boards, groups that would be recommending to the Board of County Commissioners their appointee. And then the board would have to, by statute, the board does have to approve the Ethics Commission. So we're having these 5 different stakeholders recommend to the board, and then we would be able to appoint that person if we so choose. If not, then it would go back to that stakeholder to report back to us to get another appointee, very similar to how judges
This will be in an open session.
Yeah, this will all be done.
So we haven't forgotten is what.
Yeah, this will be done in open session. So 5 stakeholders. That's the first step. And I do know the Ethics Commission is currently working, I think, with the Attorney's Office on revamping the actual procedures. But I do think one of the first things that needs to be done is how they're appointed. And this would take effect in the 2020, so it won't be 2019 because the current members go to 2020.
And sir, do you have a second comment? Ron?
You said you had a second.
Yeah, I
question.
had a second question about an update on the diversity policies that are and programs that are being developed in the county. Washington County has a long history of problems with racism and diversity. Keeping it brief, we had 10% of the population around 1800 were slaves here in the area. We had incidents with Willie Mays here. We had an international incident here at Howard Johnson's, what was it, back in 1964, that required the intervention of President Kennedy here. We've had Klan rallies. We've had, most recently, remarks and racist Klan flyers distributed, at the bike event last summer. It's not good for Washington County. It's not good for Washington County's reputation. It's not good for business in Washington County. And I would like to see what the commissioners are planning. I know that effort has been made. I believe Mr. Kiefer is on with the schools in this regard. And also we have numerous other policies. I'd again like to find out a little bit more about the specifics and the timeline. You know, given the increasingly violent rhetoric that we're seeing, particularly with regard to white supremacy, I would like to see what our county commissioners are doing on this important issue to make Washington County a safer and a better place for all its residents.
If I could just speak to that a little bit. We do have a diversity committee that was formed, as you referenced. We have a pick from the Board of Education. They can have a member join our county diversity committee. We meet on the second Monday of each month. We just had a meeting last week. Second Monday of each month, 5:30 p.m. in this building. They are open to the public. If you'd like to attend, you're more than welcome to. The committee is doing a great job trying to find their footing and exactly what they would like to deal with and help the county. The primary responsibility for the diversity committee is to make suggestions to the county commissioners and the school board as they're open to the suggestions. One of the things we wanted to cover was our hiring policies, for example, our hiring practices, to make sure that we were diverse. So that's a primary objective of the diversity committee. But again, they're forming, storming, and norming. They're in those stages. So if you have any suggestions, I'm sure that they would love to have your input. So second Monday, 5:30 p.m. in this building, if you'd like to attend.
Yeah, I would like to attend. Any, again, rough idea of the timeline, you know, what specific goals you have, or is it just in the preliminary discussion stages?
Well, I would say any suggestions that you have, bring before the committee. The timelines, they're just in the preliminary discussion stages. They were formed, we had their first meeting, I believe it was in December, so it is a new committee, so open for suggestions.
All right, I'll attend.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I've got one quick comment. I just want to make a little clarification. You talked about the USA cycling event, and I want to make sure everybody knows that wasn't, if we looked at the news afterwards, that was something that was distributed up and down the East Coast. It was not from people in Washington County, and I want to make sure that that's clarified because that event is a huge tourist attraction for Washington County, and we have the second annual one coming up this year that was not disseminated from Washington County. It was up and down the East Coast from outside people.
The Vino cyclists commented at that rally, and this was in the paper, that disparaging remarks were made, and I believe some of them said that they had seen those racist.
You're correct. There was pamphlets that were all over Clear Spring. You're correct, and those pamphlets ended up being all up and down the East Coast on that weekend, disseminating hate, which is irrepresentable. But the thing is that did not come from Washington counties. That's what I want to clarify. That came from an outside group up and down the East Coast. So, and it was later reported in the paper.
Do we know that no one in Washington County distributed that, or it seems like that's an assumption?
That's how it was reported in the paper. It was from outside the county.
I want to thank you for your comments. Anything else so we can move on to the next person?
Not today.
Thank you very much, and please join our diversity committee as it meets. Next person, name and address, please.
My name is Charles Wagaman Jr. I live at 13533 Halifax Drive, Hagerstown, 21742. I wish to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I had the pleasure in my younger days of serving in the Maryland House of Delegates and as county commissioner also. I know you gentlemen have a difficult job. Everyone else has 20/20 hindsight that's always perfect. What I would like to discuss today briefly is the Cascade Town Center Fort Ritchie project. I have read the master developer agreement that you all have with JG Business Link Development or something like that. And I have an opinion about it that's preliminary at this point, but I think you have the right under that agreement to negotiate and select persons to acquire portions of that project or the whole thing without going through JG. I know there was a private gentleman here that tried to negotiate with you, but JG, according to newspaper, insisted that he proceed through JG, and he refused and withdrew his offer. I think your master development agreement permits such direct contact between the county and a person who's interested in acquiring all or a portion of that property. And I'm concerned about various terms of the agreement, particularly the fact that under the agreement, JG can, in effect, demand compensation from a person who wants to acquire a portion of that property. And there is no provision for compensation from the county to JG. I think it creates an inherent conflict of interest by JG, because if it wants compensation, it can't look to you, it has to look to the person who's trying to acquire from you. And I just can't see how that does not create a conflict of interest. Not the county's conflict of interest, but JG's. And I think I'm concerned that its own self-interest would prevail. I would like to point out as one example of that in your own proposals for today, there's a suggestion that you set a sale price of $3,500,000.
What was that number?
$3,500,000
Okay.
for the remainder of the tract. In that proposal, and I can't find it here right at the moment, it says that 62 acres was conveyed to JG Business Link International. Back in 2017. It is accurate that 62 acres was conveyed in 2017 by the board, but it wasn't to JG Business Link International. It was to a Cascade Town Center development group for no consideration. And if, in fact, the statement that the county subsequently transferred 63 acres to JGBLI in September 2017 is accurate, then it disguised itself as Cascade Town Center development. I think that indicates a conflict of interest where someone was deceiving someone, if not the public, by the form of the deed, and who they, I'm assuming, represented wanted to acquire the property. Now, I understand that's not quite the full story of the situation, because the land transferred had significant environmental and other detrimental aspects to it. But I'm concerned about the fact that the grantee in those deeds, the identity in their relationship with JGBLI, was hidden or misrepresented or whatever it was. I don't know. I'm not aware of any preliminaries, but the final result disguises that relationship. And I would urge. I have certain Freedom of Information Act requests into the county that I delivered yesterday. I would like to have the opportunity to receive the responses to that and then comment back before you proceed further with the Fort Ritchie project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for citizens' comments? All right, seeing none. Second quarter adjustments, Washington County Board of Education. Welcome, gentlemen.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
We are back. There were questions when we were here 2 weeks ago in relation to how our second quarter budget adjustments for FY19 acted in relation to the proposed FY 2020 budget. Dr. Michael submitted a letter to Mr. Slocum, I believe, copied to the commissioners that I think explains some of those questions you may have. And so today we're back seeking your approval of the second quarter adjustments and are happy to answer any other questions you may have.
First, I want to thank you for that information. It was very informative. Just last question for you. For the operation plan, it's the replacement of the school service or security system. That's $613,000. Is this an unexpected occurrence, or is this moving something up in the future that was expected later?
This is catching up to server replacements. As we've continued to grow in our security and camera systems and moving off of old analog cameras to 12 megapixel digital cameras, the memory is far exceeding the capacity that we have on our servers. As such, we're having losses on our servers that we just have to catch up to keep the schools safe. So we're moving money to those areas and really escalating the replacement of those servers to bring them online.
Thank you. I'm good.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the transfer.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, excuse me, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much
Commissioners.
for your
Appreciate it.
prompt return and answering.
Anytime.
Thank you. Next, deliberation / consensus decision of application for zoning map amendment RZ 18-003. Jill Baker, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. As stated, we are here today to discuss rezoning case RZ 18003, P Overlook LLLP. Property is located in the Sandy Hook election district and is approximately 24.32 acres in size. More specifically, the property is bounded on is located in the southern portion of Washington County, bounded on the north by Keep Trist Road, on the west by US 340, on the east by Sandy Hook Road, and on the south by several single-family homes. Current zoning of the property is rural village, but it also contains a residential density limitation of 9 lots. The applicant is requesting to leave the property zoned rural village, but to remove that 9-acre residential lot restriction. Just as a quick reminder, the applicant is claiming that the county erred in its initial application of the rural village district with the restrictions because they contend that the decision surpassed the allowable authority of this elected body. Furthermore, the applicant contends that the county erred further in maintaining the restriction after the last comprehensive rezoning in 2005 because they believe it was not an official part of the action of this board. The Planning Commission held a public input meeting on September 10th, 2018. Planning staff presented a report to the Planning Commission members recommending denial of this request. Several members of the general public did speak at this public meeting for the Planning Commission, and they spoke against the proposal. We did not see any speaking in favor of. After the public input meeting, the Planning Commission also recommends denial of this application. Public hearing was held by the Board of County Commissioners on February 12th, 2009, for the purpose of taking testimony. As you may recall, numerous public comments were presented opposing this request, both through email and citizens participating here in person. So those were made a part of the official record for this case. So staff is now requesting that the commissioners deliberate upon this action and reach a consensus on the approval or denial of this application with findings of fact, so that the county attorney's office may draft the appropriate documentation for later consideration. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
If there's no comments, then I'll make the motion to deny.
Well, before you do that, I think it's good if we review what the commissioners need to consider as findings when they make their determination in a rezoning matter. I think there are a number of things that have to be analyzed before there's any decision that's made, so that there's indication in the record as to why the commissioners made the decision that they made. And those requirements include a number of things that would have been covered in the staff report, as well as the application that was presented by the applicant. Do you have the staff report in front of you with the required considerations? Could you just highlight them for the commissioners, please? Or I have it pulled up if you'd like me to do it as well.
If you have it pulled up, it'd be faster for you to.
First considerations are report and recommendations to the Planning Commission. Obviously, as you just heard in this case, the Planning Commission recommended denial of the requested rezoning. Population change in the area of the proposed change, the availability of public facilities in the area, present and future transportation patterns in the area, compatibility with existing and proposed development of the area, including indication of neighboring sites identified by the Washington County Historic Site Survey, the relationship of the proposed change to the adopted plan for the county, whether there was a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood where the property is located, whether there was a mistake in the existing zoning classification, whether there's been a convincing demonstration that the proposed rezoning would be appropriate and logical for the subject property. Those factors will be addressed in the written decision that's presented to the board for the board's consideration and adoption. But if you could provide us some information as to the rationale behind whether the motion is to support or to deny the requested rezoning, it helps us to put those together.
Oh, you got to. No, wouldn't just a simple fact that through the transgression of this property that the owners signed a agreement with another board of county commissioners that they agreed to limit it to 9 lots, wouldn't that be enough right there that we're going back and saying now that, okay, you agreed to it, everybody's happy, and now all of a sudden we want 25 lots? Is that that's sort of my point.
I think that's what he's saying is, I don't think there was a mistake made, and that's their argument. So I think part of this explanation is there was no mistake being made, which is the 9 lots. Right. There's been no change in the current population. By increasing the property from 9 homes to 25 lots, whatever it is, they're already talking about the traffic over that one road is high, and we don't want to increase the traffic over that area. So those 3 things, and then also taking into account that the Planning Commission was Planning Commission, right, has also recommended denial of this application. Those 4 things would be the main 4 topics that why I would be making the motion for denial.
Jill, didn't we hear where that we now have, if the builder would move forward with his 9 partials, which maybe will, maybe won't, but doesn't that conform to the surrounding? Would you consider that to conform to surrounding area where there'd be a house on, I don't know, 2.5, 3 acres? Is that what that general area is?
Yes, that was the reason for the 9 lots specifically. The commissioners at that time, along with staff, evaluated the way land development was happening in the area, and that would be consistent with surrounding development.
Okay, so it would conform right in with the existing neighborhood, basically,
Yes, sir.
rural setting, yeah.
If I could add on to another reason for the deny that you mentioned there is the strain on the services. You're adding 25 homes in that small area on the southern part of the county. That's going to be a strain on the fire and rescue services.
More discussion on it? Commissioners, do you think you have enough information to proceed, or
Is that sufficient?
Yeah, that was the kind of information that we needed.
Right, gotcha.
Then I would put back into my motion with those stated reasons.
Okay, actually, we don't really need a motion right now. We need a consensus.
Consensus, okay.
We'll prepare the proposed findings of fact for the board's official adoption. At that time, it'll be adopted formally by motion.
Commissioners, consensus to move forward with denial based on the conversation?
Yes, I'm in agreement with this.
Consensus, Terry? I'm in favor.
Yes.
Okay, consensus 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jill Baker, welcome back. Census 2000. I mean, 2020.
The 2000s. Again, good morning. I'm Jill Baker, Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. Joining me here this morning is Kathy Marr, Director of the Department of Planning and Code Administration. Thank you, for the City of Hagerstown. Since we don't have a whole lot of time today, we're going to skip the PowerPoint presentation that was prepared. There is a copy of that presentation, however, in your agenda packets, and we would encourage you that when you have some time to please take a look at that at your leisure. Instead, what we're going to do is give you a really brief overview of the census and the Complete Count Committee. As you all know, a census of population is completed in the United States every 10 years. This census is mandated by the U.S. Constitution, and it plays a vital role in governmental provision of public services. There are 3 primary things that the census plays a crucial role at the local level. First of all, it helps to determine the number of seats each state has in the U.S. House of Representatives. Second of all, it provides the data that is used by businesses and government to plan for future growth and extension of public services. And third, and probably the biggest influence, is that the census is used to distribute funding to government and nonprofit agencies to provide public services and support things like infrastructure. The federal government is estimating that about $675 billion, with a B, billion dollars, will be up for grabs over the next decade. Kathy's put together a quick little quick sheet for you to talk about the different programs. It depends upon this funding. I'm going to let her expand upon that a little bit, since that's kind of the most important thing that we'll deal with.
Yeah, the census folks told us that's what motivates people the most to be counted if they're waffling about being counted. So I contacted some of our agencies that serve the community to find out who does rely on this type of funding that is tied to demographic counts. And so what you have before you on 2 pages, front to back, are some of the agencies that do really need to have everybody counted to be able to maintain the programs they provide to our community. The library, they get technology enhancement money. The school system, a lot of for their school lunch and breakfast programs, special ed programs, a lot of programs like that. The county school system really relies on this kind of money. Housing for the Hagerstown Housing Authority, the Washington County Housing Authority, CAC, COC, I forget what that was, Continuum of Care maybe, and Turning Point. They all get funding from government agencies that is a demographically based distribution system. Food assistance, SNAP programs, emergency services, HPD applies for grants that are based on demographic data. The Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, I actually sat next to a gentleman from there at the State of the City, and I quizzed him, and he said, yes, we do rely on that kind of money. And then the social services and CAC for some of the heating and electricity assistance that our residents rely upon, medical assistance from social services, child support, public transportation from the Washington County Transit and CAC relies on this kind of money, and then also grants that the city, the county, the towns, nonprofits apply for, like ARC and other kinds of CDBG kind of money like that. It's all tied to what's the demographics of your community, and that's how we disperse funds. And so it's really critical for everyone to be counted.
Yeah, and the Census Bureau said that I think it's the city or the county of Baltimore did a study on what it costs them for every person that's not counted, and it costs $18,000 in funding per person over that decade. So we can't stress enough how crucial it is that we count everybody in Washington County. So to basically help the U.S. Census Bureau accomplish this task, we've been asked to coordinate the establishment of a complete count committee. Kathy and I got together. It's usually the planning departments that use this data the most, so it was logical that it fell to us to start working through these issues. So we felt that having a joint complete count committee between the city of Hagerstown and Washington County would best serve the needs of our community and then probably reach more people and use our resources more wisely. So the purpose of this committee is to focus efforts on getting citizens who are typically hard to count to participate in the census and be counted. Ironically, it is the hard to count population that typically needs these services the most. So it's making sure, so we're trying to make sure that they participate. It is crucial for their participation. Hard to count populations include children under 5, racial and ethnic minorities, low income, non-English speaking, homeless, and people who simply just don't trust government. The group would be comprised of members from various local government and nonprofit organizations in the county that assist and interact with these hard to count communities as part of their daily work or in their volunteer time. It is a method to get members of the community who can be a trusted voice in promoting the census. That way it's not just people from government knocking on doors saying, hey, we need to count you. It's trusted members of our community going out and talking to their citizens, their neighbors, and getting them interested in completing that. So what we're here to ask you today as the commissioners is to support us in establishing and participating in the committee by using staff time and resources where needed. This presentation, by the way, has also been given to the mayor and council of the city of Hagerstown, who have also expressed their support in this project. So what we're really asking for is your support to continue putting this group together and letting them communicate through their resources and the community to get a complete count. There's, just so everyone is also aware, we are setting up a kickoff event on April 1st. April 1st is Census Day. April 1st, we have a proclamation put together that will be presented by Commissioner Klein and the mayor of City Hagerstown, Mr. Brucci, that will kick off 1 year out from the census.
Everybody's invited.
And everybody's invited. Please come out. It'll be here in the Commissioner's Chambers on April 1st at 10 a.m. We're excited about this, trying to get everybody counted to make sure that we get the funding that we need and that our citizens need. So if you have any questions, but otherwise we're just seeking
Or
your
suggested names for the
yes,
committee?
thank you.
Just a few comments. Thank you for getting out ahead of this. The census is very important for the reasons you stated. One demographic I didn't hear too much about was senior citizens. And just keep in mind, the last 10 years we've been pounding hard into that demographic. The dangers of identity theft. Be careful, don't share your information with people. Obviously social security number wouldn't be shared during the census, but hopefully we've trained our citizens well, not just here in Washington County, but all over, the dangers of identity theft, and be careful with what you share. But that's something that, and unintended, consequences of that, you might have some seniors that are, hesitant to share that information. We want to make sure that they're counted as well for the programs that benefit their demographics. So if you could reach out to the Commission on Aging or the other groups that help senior citizens in the county, I think that would be very important.
Yeah, that is one group on our list. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully the seniors have a long tradition of participating in the census, but one of the challenges this year is that the census has switched it to being an online system, so you would be doing it on a computer, which makes you, if you're worried about that kind of stuff, using it on the computer isn't further, goes you down that pathway of worry. Plus, maybe people don't have computers, so part of the issue is making sure people know where they can go if they don't have a computer, access a computer, because otherwise the census is coming to their house.
Right.
So, yeah, to assist in that, the Census Bureau has really gone after places that have large banks of computers, such as our library. Our library, Mary Bycan, is very aware of this, extremely interested. She's ready to get started with this. We also thought about the senior center where there were banks of computers that we may be able to get people involved. But yeah, that will be an interesting challenge this time around.
Okay, Commissioners, any more comments? If not, is there a motion to approve our participation with the city?
I'll offer a motion.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next, State Homeland and Security Grant Program. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Allison Hartshorn, Grant Manager, Office of Grant Management. Joining me this morning is Tom Brown, Deputy Director, Division of Emergency Services, and Ole Griffith, Emergency Management Specialist, Division of Emergency Services. Today we are seeking approval for the submission of the FY20 State Homeland Security Grant for the Maryland Emergency Management Agency in the amount of $153,800 and accepting funding as awarded. The State Homeland Security Grant Program is administered through the Federal Emergency Management Agency and passed through the State Emergency Management Agency and distributed to local jurisdictions. The program is intended to enhance and maintain the current Homeland Security initiatives as they pertain to prevent, preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. The grant will pay for partial salary for emergency management specialists, the cost of the Washington County Citizen Notification Program, a part-time position within the Washington County Sheriff's Office for incident management team coordination, and projects and other costs which will be included training, equipment, public outreach, and response capabilities. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant guidelines. The performance period for this federal grant is September 1st, 2019 through August 1st, 2021. There are no matching funds fund requirement associated with this grant. However, at least 25% of the grant must be spent on law enforcement related tasks or equipment. Any questions?
The 25% is that going to be, that's directed right at the sheriff's department or the fire marshal, or where's it all?
So 25% of the total $153,800 has to be directed towards law enforcement. So part of that is going to come from the project for the incident management team coordination. Part of it's going to be through some of the other various projects, such as like the mass notification system, because law enforcement typically uses that on a yearly basis,
gotcha.
like 75% more than emergency management or EMS.
So it's more than likely more than 25%. Okay.
The numbers that we have right now, we're around 46%.
46% toward law enforcement.
Towards law enforcement.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any more questions? Hearing none, motion to approve submission as written.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Fiscal year transit grant. Mr. Cerrone, welcome. Good morning.
Hello again, Allison Hartshorn, Grant Manager, Office of Grant Management, and joining me is Kevin Cerrone, Director, Washington County Transit. We are seeking approval for the authorization of the filing of the application for a grant under the Federal Transit Act and approve the execution of the grant agreement upon receipt. subject to review and approval by the county's attorney office. The Washington County Transit annually applies for the federal and state operation and capital grant funding through the Annual Transportation Improvement Plan. The Annual Transportation Improvement Plan also includes an updated Title IX 6 plan. The fiscal 2020 application requests $2,778,908 in funding. The grant funds are used to operate authorized transportation programs within Washington County. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant application, and there are no unusual conditions or requirements attached to the acceptance of the grant. The local match is required in the amount of $1,010,610, which comes from the general fund, in kind, and DSS support. Any questions?
Commissioners, questions, comments?
What are the in-kind services that we're providing, the $37,750, just?
Rentals, office space, and staff time to administer the program.
Any other questions? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
There's a first, there's a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no more, we reconvene back at the college, or go to the college. See you folks back shortly.
Around the office over there, I'm gonna be there. Yeah, I can sit.
Okay.